Welcome back to LPBW Update, your number one source for the news and analysis that goes deeper than the show ever will. Today, we are tackling a story that has been brewing behind the scenes for months, a story so explosive it threatens to redefine the entire Roloff family legacy. We've all been watching the drama over the farm, the arguments, the sales, the family rifts, but what if I told you the biggest threat to Roloff Farms wasn't a family squabble? What if the real danger was a calculated, methodical scheme to bankrupt the farm from the inside out, orchestrated by the one person Matt Roloff trusts the most? We're talking about a level of betrayal that goes beyond arguments over property lines. We are talking about a sophisticated financial conspiracy. Our sources close to the family have shared details of an alleged charity scandal involving Caryn Chandler that is simply devastating. Before we dive into the shocking evidence our investigation has uncovered, do me a huge favor. If you believe in protecting the Roloff family legacy and want to see the truth come out, hit that like button right now. Make sure you are subscribed to LPBW Update and click that notification bell. You are not going to want to miss a single second of this developing story, and your support helps us continue to bring you these exclusive reports. Now, let's get into it. The story begins not with a fight, but with a brilliant idea, or at least what appeared to be a brilliant idea. In the wake of the pandemic and the ongoing family turmoil over the north side of the property, the public image of Roloff Farms had taken a hit. The comment sections were full of negativity, the narrative was searing, and Hat, ever the showman and businessman, was looking for a way to turn the tide. He needed a public relations win, something to remind the world of the magic and heart of the farm. And that's when Caryn Chandler stepped in, presenting a solution that seemed perfect in every way. She called it the Roloff Farms Foundation for Rural Youth. The concept was beautiful, almost poetic. Caryn laid out a vision for a nonprofit organization that would be the official charity partner of the farm. The foundation's supposed mission was to provide grants, scholarships, and resources to underprivileged children in rural communities, helping them get involved in agriculture, learn valuable life skills, and experience the kind of formative farm life that the Roloff kids had. She designed stunning, glossy brochures filled with stock photos of smiling, diverse children petting goats and holding freshly picked pumpkins. She spearheaded the creation of a professional, heartwarming website that was a masterpiece of marketing. It featured touching, albeit completely fabricated, testimonials from fictional families who had been helped by the foundation's generosity. To Matt, this was a stroke of genius. It was a way to build a lasting legacy beyond the television show, to cement the Roloff name as a pillar of the community. Caryn argued passionately that this would generate immense goodwill. Imagine the headlines, she'd say, "Roloff Farms gives back." It would soften their image, attract more visitors to pumpkin season, and, best of all, it would allow them to do some real good in the world. She proposed that a significant portion of all profits from pumpkin season, their most lucrative time of the year, would be publicly donated to the foundation. Matt was completely sold. He saw Caryn, his partner, not just as a loving companion, but as a visionary with a heart of gold. He proudly announced the partnership, praising Caryn's initiative and compassion. The farm's social media was updated, signs were printed, and the Roloff Farms Foundation for Rural Youth became the public face of the farm's philanthropic efforts. But behind the beautiful website and the noble mission statement was a dark and calculated secret. The foundation was a complete and utter fabrication. It was a ghost, a phantom entity created for a single purpose: to siphon money from Roloff Farms and deposit it directly into Caryn's control. Our sources have detailed how this sophisticated shell game was constructed. Using an anonymous third-party service, Caryn allegedly formed a limited liability company, an LLC, with a generic, untraceable name, something like Pacific Northwest Outreach Group LLC or Heartland Community Ventures LLC. This crucial step kept the roll-off name off the official paperwork. This LLC was the legal entity behind the foundation. Next, she opened a business bank account under this LLC's name. Because she was the sole registered agent and director of the LLC, she had exclusive and total control over this account. No one else, not even Matt, was on the signature card. This account was the destination for all the donations. So when Roloff Farms proudly cut a check to its charitable partner, the money wasn't going to help any rural youth. It was simply a wire transfer from one of Matt's business accounts into a separate business account that Caryn, and only Caryn, controlled. The final piece of the puzzle was the tax write-off. This is where the scheme transitions from simple theft to complex financial fraud. Every dollar donated to the foundation was, of course, written off on the farm's taxes as a charitable contribution. This created a massive tax deduction, reducing the farm's overall tax burden. On paper, it looked like a responsible, albeit very generous, business practice. But in reality, it was a double-edged sword bleeding the business dry. Not only was the farm losing huge amounts of liquid cash that was being funneled into Caryn's secret account, but it was also engaging in blatant tax fraud by claiming deductions for donations to a fake charity. The farm was being drained of its profits, all while being exposed to catastrophic legal and financial risk, and Matt, blinded by his trust in Caryn, was allegedly signing off on all of it. For a time, the scheme worked perfectly. The farm got its positive PR, and Caryn allegedly got a steady, untraceable stream of income. But the sheer scale of the operation was bound to raise red flags, not from an outside auditor, but from within the family itself. The first person to sense that something was deeply wrong was Jeremy Roloff. Since stepping away from the show, Jeremy has cultivated a reputation as a thoughtful entrepreneur. Alongside Audrey, he's managed his own brands, invested in real estate, and learned the hard lessons of running a business. He understands balance sheets, profit and loss statements, and the importance of fiscal responsibility. While his relationship with his father regarding the farm has been strained, his love for his family's legacy remains. According to our sources, it was during a periodic review of the farm's financial health, something Jeremy had insisted on being privy to, that the first crack in Caryn's scheme appeared. He was looking over the farm's annual report, a thick document of figures and projections. As he scanned the expense column, one line item jumped out at him: charitable contributions. The number next to it was astronomical. It was not a small token amount. It was a figure so large that it represented a major percentage of the farm's net profit for the entire year. To Jeremy, a man who knows the thin margins and high overhead of running a business, the number was not just surprising. It was fiscally insane. It was an amount that no healthy business, especially a family farm with massive upkeep costs, could sustain long term. This wasn't just generous, it was reckless. It was the kind of spending that could threaten the farm's solvency, the very future of the land he and his siblings grew up on. Confused and concerned, he approached Matt. He tried to be casual, asking about the foundation. "Hey, Dad, I was looking at the annuals, and the donations to the new foundation are huge. It's great that you guys are giving back so much, but are you sure the farm can handle that level of outflow right now?" Matt's response was vague and dismissive. He reportedly beamed with pride, not at the business acumen of his son, but at the perceived generosity of his partner. "Oh, that's all, Caryn," he said, waving a hand. "She's got such a big heart, you know? It's her passion project. And the goodwill it's generating is priceless. Best PR we've had in years. He offered no financial justification, no breakdown of the foundation's work, no strategic plan. It was all about feelings, image, and Caryn's big heart. For Jeremy, this was the biggest red flag of all. His father, a man who could be a notoriously tough negotiator and penny pincher, was being completely cavalier about a massive financial black hole in his own company. The lack of detail, the immediate deflection to Caryn's good intentions, it didn't sit right. Jeremy knew that true effective charity work involved meticulous bookkeeping, public reports, and measurable impact, not just a vague feeling of goodwill. His business sense was screaming that something was wrong. His gut was telling him that this was more than just poor financial management. It was a mystery, and he was determined to solve it. Haunted by the conversation with his father and the alarming numbers on the balance sheet, Jeremy decided to do some digging on his own. He wasn't looking to start a fight or accuse anyone. He just wanted to understand where these hundreds of thousands of dollars were actually going. His first stop was the Roloff Farms Foundation for Rural Youth website. On the surface, it still looked impressive, but Jeremy, now looking with a critical eye, began to see the cracks. He clicked on the Our Work tab. It was filled with vague platitudes about empowering communities and investing in the future, but there were no specific examples, no names of towns they'd worked in, no partner organizations, no details about any grant programs. He went to the news and events section. The last update was a post from 6 months ago, cheerfully announcing the initial donation from Roloff Farms after pumpkin season. There was nothing since. A real active foundation would have a constant stream of updates, success stories, and photos of their work in action. This website was a static, lifeless facade. His suspicion growing, Jeremy moved from the public-facing website to public records. He knew that legitimate nonprofit organizations, 501c3s, have to file specific paperwork with the IRS, most notably a Form 990, which details their financial information and is publicly accessible. He searched the IRS database and GuideStar, the largest source of information on nonprofits. He searched for the Roloff Farms Foundation for Rural Youth. The result came back, no records found. This was a major discovery. The foundation wasn't registered as a nonprofit. This meant it was either a brand new for-profit entity masquerading as a charity or something else entirely. He then broadened his search, looking for any business registered under a similar name in the state of Oregon. He finally found it, the LLC that Caryn had created. But the information he found only deepened the mystery. The publicly listed registered address for the LLC wasn't a building, an office, or even a home. It was a P.O. box at a UPS store in a strip mall miles away from the farm. A P.O. box is a classic tool for creating anonymity, a way to have a legal address without revealing a physical location. Furthermore, the documents listed only one director, one person in charge of the entire operation. The name listed was not Caryn Chandler. It was a name he had never heard before, something like Caroline May Stevens. To an outsider, it would be a dead end, but Jeremy had a vague memory, something his mother Amy might have mentioned years ago about Caryn's life and name before she was married to her ex-husband and became Caryn Chandler. The gears were turning in his head. The irresponsible spending, Matt's vague answers, the fake-looking website, the lack of a nonprofit status, the P.O. box address, and now a mysterious director's name. The picture was becoming clearer, and it was terrifying. He was no longer looking at a case of misguided generosity. He was looking at a deliberate, multi-layered deception. Jeremy knew he was at the limit of his own abilities. Googling business records was one thing, but unraveling a potentially criminal financial conspiracy was another. He was in an impossible position. He couldn't go to his father, who was clearly under Caryn's spell. He couldn't go to the authorities without concrete proof, which could prematurely blow up the family and the business. He needed undeniable, irrefutable evidence. He needed to know exactly who Caroline May Stevens was, and more importantly, he needed to follow the money. With a heavy heart, Jeremy made a decision that would change the course of his family forever. He took money from his own savings, from the profits of his own hard-earned businesses, and hired a private investigator. He sought out a discreet firm in Portland that specialized in financial forensics and corporate fraud. He met with a seasoned PI, a no-nonsense man in his 50s, and laid out everything he had found: the farm's financial reports, the website, the LLC registration, the P.O. box, and the mysterious name of the director. He made it clear he needed to know if this foundation was legitimate, and if not, who was behind it and where the money was going. The investigator got to work immediately, and the initial findings came back with chilling speed. Within 48 hours, the PI confirmed everything Jeremy had suspected, and more. The P.O. box was indeed just a mailbox. The LLC was a shell corporation with no employees, no assets, and no official place of business. But the bombshell was the identity of Caroline May Stevens. The investigator, using tools far beyond a simple public records search, ran a comprehensive background check. The name was not an alias. It was, as Jeremy had vaguely suspected, a legal name Caryn had used years ago, her maiden name, or a name from a previous marriage. It was a ghost from her past, resurrected to serve as the perfect cover for her modern-day scheme. The report was unequivocal. The sole director of the shell corporation that was receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars from Roloff Farms was, without a shadow of a doubt, Caryn Chandler. The proof was right there in black and white: old public records, name change documents, a clear and undeniable link. Jeremy stared at the report, his hands trembling slightly. The feeling was a sickening mix of vindication and pure dread. He was right. His gut instinct had been right all along. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't mismanagement. It was a deliberate, calculated act of betrayal. Caryn had built a fortress of lies, using a name from her past to hide her identity as she allegedly funneled his family's money into an account only she could control. He now held the smoking gun that proved Caryn was the architect of the entire scheme. He had uncovered the lie. But the investigator's report came with a chilling addendum. The link between your subject and the LLC is confirmed. We are now proceeding with the financial trace. We have submitted subpoenas for the LLC's bank records. We should have a clear picture of all expenditures, withdrawals, transfers, and purchases within a week. Jeremy's heart sank. He knew the worst was yet to come. Uncovering the lie was one thing. Seeing exactly how that lie was being funded, what luxuries were being purchased with the money that was supposed to secure his family's future, was going to be a whole new level of heartbreak and fury. The confrontation with his father now seemed not just necessary, but inevitable, and he feared it would be the one thing that could shatter the Roloff family for good. The week that followed, the private investigator's initial report was the longest of Jeremy Roloff's life. He was living with a ticking time bomb, a secret so toxic it felt like it was physically poisoning him. Every interaction with his father was fraught with tension that only he could feel. He'd watch Matt on the farm, overseeing a project, laughing with Caryn, and a wave of nausea would wash over him. He saw a man living in a constructed reality, completely oblivious to the viper he was sharing his life with. He saw the farm, the legacy his grandparents and parents had built from the ground up, being systematically hollowed out, and he was the only one who knew. He tried to act normal, to make small talk, but the weight of his knowledge was suffocating. He found himself avoiding the farm, making excuses, because looking his father in the eye while knowing the devastating truth he was about to unleash felt like a betrayal in itself. He reread the investigator's initial report a dozen times. The sole director is, without a shadow of a doubt, Caryn Chandler. The words were seared into his brain. It was no longer a suspicion, no longer a gut feeling. It was a fact backed by legal documents and professional verification. And now he was waiting for the other shoe to drop, the bank records. The investigator had been clear that obtaining financial records through legal channels takes time, but that they were coming. Jeremy oscillated between wanting them immediately and dreading their arrival. He needed them to prove his case to Matt, but he feared what they would contain. It was one thing to know the money was being stolen. It was another to see the receipts, to see the lavish lifestyle that the farm's future was funding. Finally, the call came. It was the investigator. His voice was calm, professional, but held an undertone of gravity that Jeremy recognized immediately. "Mr. Roloff," he said, "we have the complete financial statements for the LLC. I've prepared a preliminary summary, but you're going to want to see the raw data. It's extensive." An hour later, a password-protected, encrypted file landed in Jeremy's inbox. He opened it, his heart pounding in his chest. And as he scrolled through page after page of bank statements, his dread turned into cold, hard fury. It was worse than he could have possibly imagined. The investigator's summary was clinical, but the details were damning. The records showed a clear and consistent pattern of embezzlement on a breathtaking scale. The moment a large donation from Roloff Farms hit the LLC's account, the money began to bleed out in 100 different directions, none of which had anything to do with helping rural youth. The first and most blatant pattern was the cash withdrawals. Every few days, like clockwork, thousands of dollars were being withdrawn in cash from various ATMs across different cities. These were structured withdrawals, often kept just under the $10,000 federal reporting limit, a classic technique used to avoid raising red flags with the banks. This was untraceable money, a slush fund that could be used for anything without leaving a paper trail. Over the course of the foundation's existence, this amounted to a staggering six-figure sum that had simply vanished into thin air. But Caryn hadn't just taken cash. The statements were a roadmap of a secret life of extreme luxury, all paid for by the farm. There were charges from high-end designer boutiques in Scottsdale, Arizona, names synonymous with $1,000 handbags and shoes. There were payments for first-class flights to destinations Matt had never visited with her, a solo trip to New York City, a week-long vacation in Maui, at a five-star resort, a long weekend in Las Vegas with charges from spas, Michelin star restaurants, and VIP bottle service at exclusive nightclubs. Was she taking these trips alone, with friends? The statements didn't say, but they made one thing clear. While she was publicly playing the role of the devoted farm manager and philanthropist, she was privately living like a millionaire on Matt's dime. The spending wasn't just on fleeting luxuries, it was on substantial assets. The investigator flagged a significant down payment and subsequent monthly lease payments for a brand new luxury SUV, a model far fancier than anything she drove around the farm. The car wasn't registered to the farm or to Matt. It was registered in her name, a personal asset purchased with stolen charity money. Then there were the personal investments. The records showed large wire transfers from the foundation's account to a private brokerage account at a major investment firm. This wasn't just spending. This was a calculated strategy to build a separate, independent nest egg. She wasn't just bleeding the farm dry for today's luxuries. She was draining its lifeblood to secure her own financial future, a future that clearly didn't include relying on the farm or perhaps even Matt. The most galling discoveries were the smaller, more personal charges. There were payments to an expensive cosmetic surgeon in Portland, bills for high-end salon treatments, and even payments on personal credit card debt that predated the foundation's existence. She was using the charity as her personal piggy bank to fund a complete lifestyle upgrade and erase her old financial burdens. Each transaction was a stab in the back to Matt, a testament to the depth of her deception. The woman who claimed to love the farm, who presented herself as a partner in its success, was treating it like her own personal ATM, draining its resources with a voracious and terrifying appetite. The Roloff Farms Foundation for Rural Youth was nothing more than a private slush fund for the Caryn Chandler lifestyle, and the farm itself was on the hook for all of it. With the bank statements in hand, Jeremy knew he had everything he needed. He spent the next 2 days with the private investigator, methodically assembling what they began to call the dossier. This wasn't going to be a simple conversation with his dad. It had to be a formal, undeniable presentation of facts. He couldn't leave any room for doubt, any opening for Matt to rationalize or make excuses for Caryn. The dossier was a thick, spiral-bound report, professionally printed and organized. It was a cold, hard narrative of the entire fraud, from conception to execution. The first section detailed the creation of the Shell Corporation. It included the official state registration documents for the LLC, highlighting the P.O. Box address and the generic name chosen to avoid suspicion. The second section was the proof of identity. It contained the background check on Caroline May Stevens, complete with copies of old legal documents showing the name change, irrefutably linking the director of the Shell company to Caryn Chandler. The investigator had even managed to get a copy of her signature from an old DMV record, which was a perfect match for the signature on the LLC's formation papers. The third and largest section was the financial evidence. It began with copies of the checks and wire transfer receipts from Roloff Farms to the foundation, showing the money leaving Matt's control. Then it followed with the complete, unabridged bank statements from the foundation's account. The private investigator had meticulously highlighted every suspicious transaction, every cash withdrawal, every luxury purchase, every first-class flight, every wire transfer to her personal investment account. Alongside the statements, the PI had included supplementary evidence. For the luxury car, there was a copy of the vehicle's registration in Caryn's name. For the trips, there were publicly available social media posts from her friends who had been with her, geotagged in Maui or Las Vegas on the exact dates of the suspicious charges, posts she had been careful not to share on her own accounts that Matt followed. The final section of the dossier was perhaps the most chilling. It was a legal analysis prepared by an attorney the PI consulted. It laid out the potential criminal charges in stark, unambiguous terms: embezzlement, wire fraud, money laundering, and, most critically for the farm, felony tax fraud. The lawyer's memo explained that because Roloff Farms had claimed massive fraudulent charitable deductions, the business itself was now exposed to a full-blown IRS criminal investigation. The penalties could include millions of dollars in back taxes, fines, and even the potential seizure of assets. In her greed, Caryn hadn't just stolen from Matt. She had placed the entire Roloff legacy, the farm itself, in legal jeopardy. Holding the finished dossier in his hands felt like holding a grenade. Jeremy felt no triumph, no sense of victory. He just felt an overwhelming sadness and a crushing sense of responsibility. He was about to detonate his father's world. He knew Matt loved Caryn, that he trusted her implicitly. Presenting this proof would not just end their relationship, it would obliterate the reality Matt had been living in for years. It would force him to confront the fact that the woman he loved and planned a future with saw him as nothing more than a mark, a source of easy money. It was a betrayal so profound, Jeremy worried his father might not recover from it. He thought about backing down, about just letting it go. But then he looked at the numbers again. He saw the projection of the farm's finances if this level of donations continued. Within a few more years, the farm would be forced to take on massive debt just to cover its operating expenses. Eventually, it would become insolvent. Caryn's scheme wasn't just skimming off the top. It was a long con designed to bankrupt the farm. She was either going to drain it completely, or the IRS would eventually uncover the fraud and take it all. He was caught in an impossible choice: protect his father's feelings in the short term and watch his family's legacy be destroyed, or inflict unimaginable pain on his father right now in order to save it. There was no real choice. He had to do it. He called his father that evening. His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. "Dad, can I come over tonight? There's something important we need to discuss, just you and me. It's about the farm's finances." Matt sounded pleased, probably thinking Jeremy was finally taking a more proactive interest in the business. "Of course, son. I'll be in the office after dinner. Come on by." When Jeremy arrived at the farmhouse, the lights were on in the office. He walked in, the heavy dossier tucked under his arm in a plain manila envelope. Matt was sitting at his desk, a smile on his face. "Hey, Jer, what's on your mind?" The casual, happy greeting almost broke him. He closed the office door behind him, the click of the latch echoing in the quiet room. "Dad, please just listen to what I have to say without interrupting. This is going to be really hard to hear." Matt's smile faded, replaced by a look of concern. Jeremy took a deep breath and laid the envelope on the desk between them. He didn't open it yet. He started from the beginning, from his initial concerns about the size of the charitable donations. He recounted their vague conversation and how it had sparked his suspicion. Matt's expression hardened slightly. "Jeremy, we've been over this. Caryn's foundation is doing wonderful things. The PR has been fantastic." "That's the problem, Dad," Jeremy said, his voice quiet but firm. "It's not doing anything. The foundation isn't real." He saw a flash of anger in Matt's eyes. "That's a ridiculous accusation. I've seen the website. I've signed the checks. Of course it's real." This was the moment. Jeremy slowly slid the dossier out of the envelope and opened it to the first page. "Please, Dad, just look." He walked his father through it, piece by agonizing piece. He showed him the LLC registration, the P.O. box address. Matt scoffed. "It's just administrative stuff, Jeremy. A way to keep things organized." Then Jeremy turned the page to the background check. He pointed to the director's name. "Do you know a Caryn May Stevens?" Matt shook his head. "No, of course not." Jeremy then slid the legal name change document next to it. He watched as his father's eyes scanned the paper, tracing the line from Caryn May Stevens to Caryn Chandler. The color began to drain from Matt's face. He looked from the paper to Jeremy and back to the paper. For the first time, a flicker of doubt, of pure shock, entered his eyes. He was silent. Jeremy didn't wait. He pressed on, turning to the financial section. "This is where the money went, Dad." He laid out the first bank statement. "Here is the donation from the farm, landing in the account. And here," he said, his finger tracing a line across the page, "is the first cash withdrawal the very next day, $5,000, and another one 3 days later, and another." He flipped through the pages, a sickening montage of debits and withdrawals. "Look at this, Dad. A charge from a designer store in Scottsdale for $7,000. Was the foundation buying handbags for rural youth?" Matt stared at the page, his mouth slightly agape. He looked like he had been punched in the stomach. He couldn't speak. Jeremy continued, his voice heavy with a grim sadness. "Here are the first-class plane tickets to Maui, the 5-star resort bill. Here's the down payment on her new SUV. The wire transfers to a private stock account." He didn't have to raise his voice. The cold black and white numbers on the page were screaming for him. He saved the worst for last. He turned to the final section, the legal analysis. "And this, Dad, this is the problem for the farm. This is the tax fraud. Every dollar you wrote off as a charitable donation was a lie. The IRS..." He didn't need to finish the sentence. Matt slumped back in his chair. He looked small, broken. The confident, deal-making patriarch was gone, replaced by a man hollowed out by betrayal. He stared at the dossier, at the mountain of irrefutable proof, and the reality of the situation crashed down on him. Every kind word from Caryn, every supportive gesture, every declaration of her love for him and the farm was now cast in a sinister new light. It was all a performance. The entire relationship, the foundation, her role on the farm, it was all part of a long, meticulously executed con. She didn't love him. She didn't love the farm. She saw them as a resource to be plundered, an opportunity for her own enrichment. Jeremy watched his father, his heart breaking for him. There was no anger left in him, only a profound sense of tragedy. The silence in the room stretched for what felt like an eternity, broken only by the quiet hum of the office computer. Finally, Matt looked up from the dossier, his eyes filled with a devastation Jeremy had never seen before. He looked at his son, and in a voice that was barely a whisper, he asked the question that hung over everything: what do we do now?